Hi, my name is Madison, and this is my brother Jeremy and my sister Sydney, and we're here today to tell you about our experience with No Longer Bound.
Kristen and I had just gotten married less than a year before, and we were about to have our first child. It was a very exciting time in my life, but I was also stinking drunk all the time. Everybody around me was just trying to rally and be there for me, but everybody knew that I was just in deep. Nobody knew exactly how to help me. I was so out of control at this point. I was bound to this that I couldn't get away from this and just feeling absolutely hopeless. The first time I used drugs was when I was probably about 17 years old. I drank the first time, and I also smoked pot very shortly after that. And I really felt like there was a freedom that came with it. It was instant. I felt alive, and I was with a new group of friends, and it just felt very right at the time. The using really ramped up when I started going off to art school. I went to Atlanta College of Art, and that's where I pretty much started using marijuana on a daily basis and drinking on the weekends, and decided that it would be best if I transferred out of the school. I ended up moving in with a friend of mine at the University of Georgia and enrolling there. Not long after that, I was lucky enough to meet Kristen, my wife. At this point, I blamed my poor school work on not being able to focus and started taking medication for it. That medication was highly addictive as well, and ultimately it was not the answer, and I was abusing it before long. That was the start of a really long pill addiction for me.
First time I met Brandon was in Athens, Georgia. I had moved there to go to school, and the first thing I noticed about him was that he was very gentle. He had a very gentle heart, and he was very kind, and we just had a connection. I first noticed that Brandon had an addiction. It was probably right after we got married. I knew that he drank and that he smoked a little before, but I didn't realize it was a problem until later. I would say it was a few months after we were married, and we lived in an apartment, and I was working, having to get up early every morning to go to work, and he was having friends over in the middle of the night, and I knew something was up because I just didn't feel like he was respecting me.
During that time, I was working for a jeweler, and things were just, at this point, just considerably hard. I was constantly making excuses for my bad behavior and getting in trouble, and especially with Kristen, I was not being a good husband. I was drinking, and she'd find me passed out, or I'd stay up all night and she'd not come to bed until wee hours of the morning.
My parents were worried for me, but I always stood up and said, he'll be okay, he's gonna be fine. So I was constantly defending him in that way, and one of the most horrible things that I had to go through was when I was pregnant with my first child, Madison, and he decided that he couldn't handle it, so he left.
When I found out that our daughter Madison was being born, I freaked out and just ended up leaving and completely was out of my mind. And I had decided that I was just gonna jump right in, and I was gonna quit my job, and I was gonna become an artist, sink or swim. This is how it was gonna be. And it almost wrecked us financially. It was an awful time, and I could not see it. I couldn't see the damage that I was doing, and Kristen couldn't take it anymore, and she finally did the best thing that she could have ever done for me, and that was, she said that you need to leave now. you need to go ahead and pack up your things and leave. Looking back, it was the best thing that she ever could have done for me. I got a call from my brother saying that a friend of the family had heard about a program called No Longer Bound. I realized very quickly being here that I was living in a fantasy world, and it became abundantly clear real early on what I really wanted, and I wanted to be with my family.
After he'd been in the program for a while, we were able to come visit him, and I remember the first time coming to visit him, and it was amazing. Our relationship is wonderful now. It's like it never was in the 10 years that he was in his addiction. I'm so grateful that we found this program for him because it's made a tremendous difference.
Right shortly before I left the program, I felt this newfound freedom, but I still was very worried about what that next chapter of my life was going to look like. Immediately leaving the program, I was blessed with a job, and it was warehouse work, and it was, pick this box up here, put it over here, but it's exactly what I needed because it was such a transition from being in a program to being back out in life. I needed to stay busy. It was extremely important for me to stay busy and to have that sense of worth. I started pretty much at an entry-level position there, and I've been at the company for 5 years. In that 5 years, they've gotten behind me and really rallied behind me and believed in me, as well as many other No Longer Bound graduates. They've taken a chance on us. I feel like I've got purpose. Before I came to No Longer Bound, I wouldn't say that I had a relationship with God. God was not something tangible to me. He was, like I said, he was kind of talked about at church and left at church, and then I went about my day and my weeks in between, turning to him once. Since I've left No Longer Bound, it's been dramatically different. I turn to him daily. I talk to him. I feel like I'm able to give things over to him that I am not strong enough to handle on my own. And with that comes freedom to me. And if anything, I hope that I can instill this, in my children. I hope they see me as an example of how even though you can get in trouble in life and you can fall down, the answer is always Christ.
I am risen, and I am no longer bound.
Dear Dad, I am so lucky to have you in my life. You are the sun to my rainy days. I can't imagine what it would be like if you had not decided to change 6 years ago. I am glad you found hope and healing and No Longer Bound. It meant that you were able to stay a part of our family. I remember every Saturday when we visited you and how much fun we always had. It was always hard to say goodbye, but I feel blessed that I don't have to say goodbye anymore. Thank you, Dad, for listening when I really need it, providing for our family, and always showing how much you really care for us. I love you, Daddy. Happy Father's Day. Love, Maddie.